Hi, everyone. Story Medicine. Today, I have Leslie Hardy here with us, who is an integrative health coach, yoga teacher, and inclusive wellness advocate specializing in self care, stress management, and mindful living to support high vibrational motherhood. She founded her coaching practice, She Before We, to help women of color practice unapologetic self care, stress management, and mindfulness by supporting their healing journeys through health and wellness coaching so that they can live well and be well. In addition to that, Leslie also serves as program manager in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion at Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio, where she is responsible for partnering with internal and external stakeholders to promote workforce and professional staff diversity, education, and inclusion initiatives across the enterprise. Her extensive healthcare background also includes experience in hospital and program administration, health policy analysis, and the pharmaceutical industry. And I think that the work that Leslie is doing is important now more than ever because not only is she a wellness expert, but she's somebody who is working directly with people who may be in contact with everything that's going on. I'm like, do I
Mhm.
want to name it or am I going to give it more power if I do end up naming it? So, without further ado, I'm just really excited to have Leslie here to share her story with us. And so, first of all, welcome, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me, June. It's great to be with you and with
Thanks.
your audience.
Thanks. So, Leslie, tell us more in your own words about what is your medicine, and then also, um, yeah, is Cleveland your hometown, or what was the journey that led you there?
Yeah. So maybe let's start with how I landed in Cleveland. And so, no, Cleveland is not my hometown. I've been here for about 3 years now. I'm still not used to the snow that's falling in April. Like I mentioned to you before we hopped on the call, snow did fall here yesterday. So still adjusting to Cleveland at the 3 year mark. But no, I'm not from Cleveland. I've actually kind of been born and raised anywhere you name it. It's funny. I actually consider myself a little bit of a global citizen in many ways, being kind of born in the East Coast of the United States in the DC area, spending some time in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. And then during all of my adolescent years, actually, I spent overseas in Asia. We spent time in Singapore, also in Shanghai, China. And I had a lot of time to travel, while I was overseas. And so you can really plot me anywhere and I can find home in that space. I've since been in New York and back in DC and New Jersey, St. Louis, and again now Cleveland. So, and believe it or not, June, we're actually relocating again in this summer, actually, to going back to Washington D.C. to be a little closer to family, moving for my husband's role. So my family and I, my two young sons and I, have been up for this ride and have really enjoyed it, and continue to just kind of explore and see what lies ahead. But it's interesting because you kind of asked me a little bit about, what is my medicine? And it's funny because I think I've started to really discover how I'd like to, I think, make an impact and support people as I've gone through this journey of moving and relocating and uprooting, first for my dad's job as a younger kid and now for my husband's job as an adult. And it's interesting because I think the medicine that I like to share is really medicine that I'm still learning to embody and practice myself in many ways. And that is, how as mothers, and specifically as mothers of color, do we really center self care in our lives, right? How are we putting ourselves first? And so as I navigate that journey, again, with my family, I hope that some of what I'm learning is, kind of trickling out amongst the masses and can really be something that I can share with, and kind of guide other mothers who look like me kind of in that space too, right? So self-care first.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about our medicine, it's not necessarily something, I think off the first bat, people may have the conception of, oh, this is a medicine that I give to people,
That's right.
but none of this medicine matters if we are not practicing receiving that for ourselves first. And I think that it's so important we highlight the reasons why this medicine is important to us. And for you in particular, your commitment to be a stand for other mothers of color, to say, but stop, wait,
Mhm.
self-care first. And I think that we also get to redefine what self-care looks like for us, because many people may perceive self-care to be about bubble baths and chocolate, or that self-care is just a privilege that's only
Mhm.
accessible to people who have more resources than others.
Mhm.
And so I would love to know how your life experiences, and most especially your ancestral lineage, has influenced the way you're showing up today, and why it is you choose to embody and also receive and give this medicine.
June, you are so right. You hit the nail on the head. So many folks are envisioning self-care as kind of, bubble baths and, experiencing luxury. And, that is self-care in many ways if you choose to make it so. But what I've noticed and what I've observed really over the past several years is that when we look at kind of wellness and healthcare and what healthcare looks like for people of color, we're not really centered in that space. We're really not centered in the wellness space. And so, it begs the question, are we deserving of wellness? Are we deserving of wholeness? Are we deserving of experiencing well-being kind of at its heights? And, my answer to that would be yes. I've worked in healthcare for quite some time. And what I can tell you, in my opinion, is that I think that self-care really is healthcare. Healthcare outcomes really are dependent on kind of our individual choices and actions, more so than anything else, more so than our genetics, more so than, uh, um, you know, diseases that we may be experiencing kind of in our day-to-day lives. Our individual choices really root us in kind of, our health outcomes and what that looks like, specifically in communities of color. And so for me, self-care again really does embody what healthcare is and what wellness is. And so when we think about my ancestral lineage, I identify as Black and African American, and so my roots trace back to Western Africa, as many Black people in the United States. Identify, that's where the slave ships, kind of embarked upon once they left the United States and kind of came to that Western African coast. And so it's funny because I acknowledge that really my generation is the first generation that's even been able to take some time to sit back and think about themselves, right? To think about, what do I want, um, my well-being to look like? Just to even think about and ponder, postpartum, right? Children, to think about and ponder, how do I feel in my body now that I've become a mother, now that I've made this massive shift. When once you have children and a new woman is born, you're no longer the person you were. You evolve into the role of a mother. And so to have the luxury to be able to have the space and time to think about that, what it looks like for you and how you how you would like to navigate that space, that's really a privilege that we're really being able to experience really in this generation for the first time. And I feel like it's a privilege that we women of color and mothers of color have to take advantage of, because it's something that we know even our mothers and our grandmothers didn't have access to, just a few years ago. So really my ancestral lineage, I think, roots me in a tremendous sense of gratitude, really, for the sacrifice of my ancestors, and for all of the women that, kind of paved the way before us, and that had to really just kind of function in a space of survival, right? And a space of just trying to get through another day, and really their efforts and sacrifices and just strength really, resounds, I think, in me. And I carry that with me as I think about kind of what self-care looks like for me.
Yeah, I think many people may use self-care as a way to bypass acknowledging the historical
Absolutely.
roots that have led so many communities, in particular women and people of color, to to hold this trauma in their body. And so
That's right.
if I feel like it takes us going backwards before we're able to go forward. Or of course, one of my favorite proverbs about Sankofa, right? In order to move forward, you must first go backwards.
That's right.
And so I think also because we use self-care as such a fluffy term, or we
Mhm.
all often use it as a prescription for people whenever people are feeling burnt out or overwhelmed. Oh, you just need self-care. And I think you get to see it on both sides, as
Mhm.
somebody who actually on multiple sides, as somebody who's a mother, as a person of color, as
Mhm.
somebody who works in the professional field of healthcare. I'm sure that you hear that term being thrown around so much. And so I think that it's important to acknowledge that self-care is only possible when we're able to support that as a collective, whether it's inside of an organization or if it's within your family or your friends. So, how is it that you would define self care? What does that look like for you in your everyday life, especially as somebody who is holding so much space for people on multiple fronts?
June, you're so right. Self-care, I think, has to be viewed holistically and kind of not in separate bits and pieces. And so when I look at self-care and really what it is and what it means, it's really inclusive of all aspects of our well-being. So that really just means, that could be your mind-body connection, that could be your physical environment, that could be, movement, exercise, rest, managing stress that you might feel, day to day, and especially right that heightened sense of stress that we're all kind of feeling and managing and navigating, and managing and navigating right now. Self care is our personal development. Self care is our professional development. It's the way we nourish our bodies, right? So when we look at self care holistically, we see that we kind of can't just pick and choose what parts to pay attention to and what parts not to pay attention to. They all come together and I think inform our overall sense of well being. And so when we think about how to really kind of incorporate that in our day, especially for me and for I know other mothers out there, we're thinking, okay, when can we find the time to actually think about all of those things that I just listed and to like pay adequate due attention to those elements of our lives? And it's interesting. I think it depends in many ways on where it is, on where you are in your mothership and your motherhood journey. Um, if you have a newborn, right? I mean, God bless, right? I mean, we have to just take that moment and find 5 minutes whenever we can when our baby is sleeping to kind of, refuel and renourish ourselves. My children are a little older now. They're 6 and 2. So the routine that I've been able to establish myself for myself has really been around the predictability of their sleeping, right? And knowing when they sleep and when they typically wake up. And so what I've really done, at this point in my life to kind of stay nourished and rooted is to really establish a solid morning and evening routine. That's been something that's been absolutely paramount for me. And what that looks like for me is, I wake up about an hour before I know my children will be awake, sometimes even more. And I know that that can be so hard to hear because you're like, let me get the extra sleep. But you will not regret, I think, kind of just waking up a little bit earlier than your children do to take some time to nourish yourself, and to kind of mitigate some of the running around that has to happen, that I know moms know about as soon as your kids wake up. And so for me, what that looks like in the morning is I wake up again about an hour before my kids and I make time for meditation. And meditation really to me is taking time to listen to what God is saying to me and to listen to kind of what my next steps are and to listening kind of really to myself and what's coming up inside. And I do that depending on the day, right? It could be 5 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, no judgment. You squeeze in, whatever can work for you, depending on the circumstance. And after that, I take some time to journal. I actually have an awesome journal that prompts me and kind of asks me questions about, what my intention is for the day and, how I'd like to feel for the day. And, it kind of, it helps me to pay attention to some of those self-care elements that we went through, related to movement, nutrition, and things like that. And then last but not least, I have to incorporate movement in at some point in my morning after my journaling, and whether that's yoga or strength training at home. I know that we're all confined to our homes right now and not able to access gyms. And so I've been just doing some strength training on YouTube and, with other free resources. So that's my morning routine. And right, that kind of gets me in, I think, the mind space that I need to be in to, battle my day, to, be home with our kids now, right? We're homeschooling our kids during these times. And it just really sets my intention, I think, very firmly for the day. And then I have my evening routine, which, I circle back to my journal and I kind of just take a peek and say, hey, how am I feeling? What am I noticing about, what happened during the course of the day? How am I feeling before bed? I offer gratitude, for what I've been able to achieve. And if I haven't been able to achieve something, I say, you know what, we'll circle back and see what tomorrow looks like and what tomorrow brings. So kind of being able to pencil out that time in the morning and then in the evening has just been extraordinarily helpful and very grounding for me.
Yeah, I feel like whenever I hear the word routine, there's some resistance that comes up in my body, but
Mm,
I've come to redefine it as ritual
yeah.
because ritual is something that so many of us have been deprived from. And when I
Mm-hmm.
think about rituals, I think about it as an opportunity to reconnect with with my my higher self and also my ancestors because my ancestors had rituals and today we have so many distractions that can derail us. I think that oftentimes self-care may look like I need to sleep in today and there's no shame in that. But then
Absolutely not.
if self but then if for example sleeping in or binging on Netflix becomes if you start calling it self-care without recognizing that that might actually be a means of dissociation from you doing the challenging work of being able to show up for yourself so that you can show up
Mm-hmm.
for your family,
That's right.
for
That's right.
example.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, I see that as the
Mm-hmm.
missing piece that sometimes self-care looks like actually getting up an hour earlier and brushing your teeth.
Right.
Sometimes self-care is not meant to be an easy thing,
That's right.
especially when we have all of these stories that are holding us back from being able to
Mm-hmm.
just show up for ourselves.
It's so true. And I think, that aspect around kind of bypassing difficult spaces, right? Whether it be, spiritual bypassing, kind of, mental bypassing, and right, just bypassing kind of those difficult spaces. I think self care, to your point, really can be a tool or a mechanism that allows you or helps you to really sit in that space and just kind of, pull out, I think, what you need to um, kind of excavate and navigate through, right, in order to continue that evolvement process. Self-care is really about evolvement and continuing to kind of grow in your journey.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that I ask myself is, well, I love how you said your morning rituals or routines help you prepare for the battle of the
Yeah,
day.
that's right.
And so what I like to call it is the three M's,
Mm-hmm.
morning, well, meditation, movement, and morning pages. And then I find that
Mm,
if I am not doing at least one of those things, then
mm-hmm.
I'm not prepared for battle.
Yeah. And I liked it. I like that you just said at least one of those things because when I listed my things that I do, some days you can't necessarily do all of them, right? Sometimes it literally is just one and, anchoring on to that one thing that you're able to do and still offering yourself grace, right? For just even being able to take the time to stand in that space with just that one thing. If that's all you can do, it's okay.
Yeah, if we can begin our mornings on with a good mindset, that will also help to inform our our body to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that my mentor says when she hasn't gotten a lot of sleep the night before is when she wakes up, the first thing she'll say is, wow, I got just enough sleep I needed to make it through the day. And so that
Yeah.
I could be of service. And
Yeah.
that alone has been such a huge shift for me in the way I show up, despite all the overwhelm.
Wow, June, I'm stealing it and putting it in my back pocket. Thank you. Yeah, it's so you can be so tempted to be like, "Oh, I'm so tired. I didn't, but you know what? I got just enough for what I need." Oh, I love it. I'm stealing it.
Mhm. Yes, I'm so grateful for getting just enough of what I need.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what is it that you're learning to release?
June, so many things. If I had to pick one thing I think that I'm really learning to release, and this is a process, it's to not judge, I think, my worthiness and associate that with my productivity and my resilience, my perceived resilience, right? Um, it's so easy, especially as women who are, stereotypically nurturers, who are historically looking and caring for others, to say, I need to make sure that I'm productive and here for whether it's my partner, whether it's my children, whether it's my community, whether it's my coworkers, go down the list. It goes on and on. And to judge yourself based on that level of productivity or lack thereof. And I think what I'm wanting to embody more of is that, you know what? I am worthy just because I'm here, and embody this journey of motherhood that I'm on and that so many of us are on, and take it day by day and know that it's okay to have to make adjustments, to have to make pivots, and to not serve everyone else before you serve yourself. And, I would argue quite the opposite, right? Is taking that time to pour into yourself so you can show up for all the others in your lives, as you mentioned a little bit earlier. So just releasing that is a challenge. It's something that we have to come back to and revisit day by day, every day, especially as women, especially as mothers. But I'm navigating it and trying to just remind myself that, you know, we have no control over any really outcome that presents itself to our lives. All we have really is the option to do is take each moment by moment, and to surrender to what is. And so I'm a work in progress, as we all are.
Yeah, I don't I've said this many times, but healing is not an end destination. It is
Absolutely.
everyday
Hmm.
practice, and
Yeah,
we're I don't know if we're ever going to be fully healed,
that's
because
right.
something is always going to challenge us, something is always going to trigger us. But I think the invitation for us to lean into is, are we going to see that as an opportunity for change,
Mhm.
or victimize ourselves and allow that to stop us from being able to I will say mother ourselves, because
Mm,
I don't have any children, and so when I hear you speak about motherhood, I'm like, oh, maybe that this conversation doesn't relate to me. And actually, I know that it does,
that's right.
because how do you show up as a mother if you yourself are not tending to your inner child?
I love it, June. I love it because whether you have, to your point, physical children or not, we're all carrying that inner child within us, and we're all still evolving as women. And I think women just have more of a common bond and connection that spans across whether you're a parent or not a parent. And so I love that you pointed out that caveat. And I also love that you pointed out that healing is not something that we kind of, oh, check that box, I'm healed, like I read that book, I did that program, I went to that coach. I love to say that healing is a lifestyle, and let's embrace it as such, right? I mean, I think especially in communities of color, we're so in so many ways like adverse to wanting to have those conversations and to kind of have our mental health, right? Um, as a dominant part of the conversation. We're very quick to be supportive of others in our communities who are struggling with physical health ailments, and I broke my leg, tell me about it, are you okay, what can I do? I'm struggling to get my kids lunch because I am so tired and exhausted and I didn't sleep because I was up feeding the baby all night. We don't. Where's the willingness to kind of reach out and discuss kind of some of these really important kind of mental aspects of our health and well-being. And so absolutely to your point, yeah, healing is a lifestyle and something that we should all be embracing.
Hmm. So, okay, if you could share with us a ritual of your own, a
Sure.
practice or words of wisdom to help us stay grounded in these times of change, what would that be?
It's interesting because this is a ritual or a practice, I would say, that we should have embodied prior to current circumstances and definitely need to more so now that we're in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And then I think is really related to cultivating a mindfulness practice. And then, how do we support that mindfulness practice? That's another question. I think just being very clear about what mindfulness is, is number one, right? And it's kind of just a simple definition that I like to use is that mindfulness is really just being aware of, the present moment experiences and doing so without judgment, right? And then once we know what mindfulness is, how do we cultivate it? And one of the ways that I really love to cultivate my mindfulness practice that I love to kind of share with others is using breath work. And I say breath work because and what is breath work? Breath work is simply mindful breathing, right? It's simply paying attention to your breath and centering in your breath. And it's easy, it's free, it's available for everyone. We don't have to get on a phone call or pay money or try and find a way to assess it. It's accessible to everyone, and we all carry it with us. And it's really just been an important part of my mindfulness practice. Yeah.
Cool. So,
Mm-hmm.
would you be open to leading us through a short breathwork session that we can integrate
Yeah.
for ourselves?
I sure can. I sure can. And, I think what I'd like to share, June, is just maybe two examples of breath work that can be helpful for folks who are kind of navigating current circumstances, maybe just when you need a time to step away and take a break. Um, and one breath is simply our easy breath, and ideally that's the way we're breathing on a day-to-day basis with practice, with intention. This is something that may not naturally come to you, but over time with practice certainly can. And our easy breath just simply looks like deep belly breathing with equal amounts inhaling and exhaling. And so very quickly I'll just kind of maybe demo and maybe we can do it together.
Yeah, I would love that.
So if we kind of come and sit up, and whether you're sitting or standing or laying on the floor, that's fine. But we just want to make sure that our spine is nice and straight and long, and our shoulders are kind of dropped down and away from our ears. If your jaw is clenched, go ahead and release that. Release the tongue away from the root of your mouth, and just kind of center yourself on your sit bones, or if you're laying down, really flat on your back. And we'll take just a deep cleansing breath in and out together for the count of 4. So let's go ahead and inhale deeply together through our nose, the count of 4. Hold that at the top and exhale completely through the nose, all through the count of 4. And June, what you might notice is that breath is really balancing, right? And so we have equal parts inhaling and exhaling, and we can just do it together for maybe 2 more rounds. Okay, so go ahead and inhale deeply through your nose and exhale. Allow your belly to just kind of fully extend as you exhale. Get all of the air out of your lungs. Inhale again. And exhale. And that's our easy breath. And again, with practice, we can kind of carry that breath with us, throughout the day, to help us feel more balanced. And go ahead, June.
Yeah, I love
Mm-hmm.
that. We had another guest speaker, Danelia, who
Mm-hmm.
taught us how to breathe from the belly more so
Yeah,
than the chest, because a
that's
lot
right.
of us are just operating from this part of ourselves. And
You,
so that would be another opportunity for us to lean
mm-hmm.
into expansion. I think if we can practice
Mm-hmm.
finding expansion inside of our bodies, then we can take that into the outer world. What is possible
Mm-hmm.
outside of, like, if we can expand ourselves, we can expand our possibilities.
That's so true. And, the emphasis on the belly is key because I think, what we tend to do is just kind of, I don't even know if we realize it, but we breathe very shallowly sometimes, especially when we have that heightened anxiety and stress and we're kind of breathing, in the chest, right? And so maybe when we do our next breath together, our 4-2-6 breath, what we can do is actually put our hands on our belly so we can kind of pay attention and have some intention around the contraction and expansion of our belly. So great point, June. And let's work that into our next breath, which is again our 4-2-6 breath. And what that means is that we're going to be inhaling for 4. We hold at the top for 2 counts. And then for 6 seconds, we do a nice deep cleansing exhale. Again, letting that belly just bam, just let it hang, like let it go. Like we're not here trying to, fit into our skinny jeans. We're just going to relax and let it go. Right.
Yeah,
And so,
for those of you who are listening live, I strongly invite you to do this alongside us. And
yes.
this is a great way to start off our mornings, or if you're in the East Coast, your afternoons.
That's right. And if you feel constricted in any way, go ahead and unbutton those jeans, or better yet,
Yes,
just take them off, right?
yes, be unapologetic about letting your belly hang out.
In this breath, unlike our first breath, which is more balancing, this breath is actually more kind of calming. It helps us to kind of reduce anxiety levels. The emphasis is really going to, again, being on making that exhale a lot longer than our inhale. That's what's going to induce that calming effect. Okay. So I'll hold count for you guys. I'll count with my fingers 1, 2, 3. Can you see 1, 2, 3, 4? Hold at the top for 2, and then we'll release it for the count of 6 together. Okay. So we'll do this 2 times. And let's go. So go ahead and deeply inhale through the nose, count of 4. Hold for 2. And exhale for 6. All right. Okay. Hopefully you can really feel that in your belly. Let's do it again. Let's draw the air in. Deepest inhale that we've had all day or all morning. Inhale. Hold that at the top. And exhale completely for 6. Excellent. That's our 4-2-6 breath. You have both of these breaths in your pocket anytime you need them, anytime you need to step away, get a quick break, kind of reduce stress levels. Again, having that breath work in place is really going to, I think, solidify the cultivation of your mindfulness practice and help enhance it if you already have one.
And then let me tell you, so yesterday I haven't left my place in probably at least 2 weeks. That's my intention. I'm only going out maybe once every 2 weeks because I
Mm-hmm.
want to be respectful of
Yeah.
physical distancing. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
to call it social distancing because of
Yeah.
how connected we still can be.
That's right.
And the first time I went out, I felt sad seeing how people were just confused about what was going to happen. And I was like, I don't want to go out again. And of course, I need to go and get my groceries and I need
We have
a
to
hint
eat.
of sunshine too.
Yes.
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 And so yesterday, as I saw the shift of now everybody being more conscious of how it's going to take all of us as a global collective to get through this,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, this is actually an opportunity for all of us to practice mindfulness
Mm-hmm.
in the way that we are are showing up with our energy, in the ways that we are even being asked to breathe
Mm-hmm.
because we got to breathe.
That's right.
But how is it that we can do it in a way that is soothing to our nervous system? Because we know that if we are out of alignment, if we are short of breath, if we are anxious and stressed out, not only is that a disservice to our immune system,
Mm-hmm.
but that's also going to feed into the collective fear and the trauma. And so to shift that ripple is going to start with shifting the way it is we are choosing to show up in these times.
That's
And
right.
it could be as simple as just starting with your breath.
Just starting with your breath, put yourself in a little timeout. This is what I think this period is that we're in. I'm referring to it as a timeout. and just, put yourself into your own personal timeout and connect to your breath. Absolutely, June.
So, what's one
Mm.
action you would like to invite our listeners to take?
Yeah, let's stick with the breath work. Let's stick with, if you can commit to um, taking in time to intentionally breathe during the day, I think that that's such an easy, accessible, and meaningful way to kind of stay mindful, while we're in our timeout, while we're in our while we're processing kind of what we're going through with our families. You can easily step away, just take a moment, whether it's just a couple breaths like we did for two rounds of breaths together, or whether it's 5 minutes of breath work. And I think that, there's a if we think about incorporating breath work into our mindfulness ritual, for the day, I think that looks like really committing to, breathing intentionally as part of your own self-care practice. And then I think it means deciding, what you'll do, I'm sorry, when you'll do your breath work, whether you do it, before you meditate, whether you do it before a yoga practice, whether it's before bed. And then just taking that time to really be intentional and notice how you feel once you do it, right? So I would challenge folks to really commit, decide, and notice as a result of their breathwork practice.
Commit,
Hmm.
decide, and notice. And I think
Hmm.
noticing and awareness is where it
Yeah.
all begins. And instead of
Hmm.
saying, suddenly I am a wellness expert, none of us come into this because we're already healthy and well. We
That's
all
right.
come into this because of our own stuff that we are healing from.
That's right.
And and we're being called to this work because maybe it worked for us, and
Hmm.
if others need more support and guidance in coming back to their own breath or their body, then of course, like, we are happily available. So where is it that people can go to learn about you and your work, and then also tell us what is it that you're brewing?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I am currently just recently established my health coaching practice. It's called She Before We. Do you get it, June?
I
She comes
get
before
it.
we. And so it's called She Before We, and you can check me out on that website. It's shebeforewe.com. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me there at She Before We as well, and same on Facebook. We've created a private Facebook community for folks who are engaged with She Before We. We think that community is really just an essential part, I think, of kind of navigating your self care mindfulness journey as a mother, and as a mother of color, especially. And so we want to create kind of that safe space for moms to connect while navigating that space. So I look forward to working with really anyone who I think is interested in better understanding kind of mindfulness practices, navigating stress management, and really just wanting to take care of themselves so they can better show up for their families and those that depend on them.
Yeah, and didn't you just start a YouTube channel? Tell me about
I did. So for those, I have to share. So, June has given me such great advice. She's such a great friend. And she actually encouraged me to post one of my yoga classes that I taught online to a YouTube channel. And so I did create a YouTube channel. I currently have two videos in the works. One is simply another review of this breathwork practice that we went over today with a little bit more insight and information. And then another one is about a 45 minute kind of easy, slow flow yoga class. More videos to come. I'm actually working on a beginner yoga. Video kind of by request from some of my audience, that would like to see that I'll also post there. And so you can find that YouTube channel at She Before We as well. Thanks for mentioning that, June.
Yes, resources are absolutely abundant right now,
Yeah.
and of course, it's why producing this is bringing me so much joy, and hopefully watching this just help to uh, expand your lens and possibilities, and to also know that you are not alone on your
Mm-hmm.
journey. We are in this together, and yeah, just start with your breath. And so thank you so much, Leslie, for joining me today. And also, it's been such an honor to also to doula you on your
Yeah,
journey, because
absolutely.
yeah, I feel like all of my clients are my greatest teachers. And so when you show up, it becomes medicine for me to also continue doing the work.
I love to hear that. And I just appreciate you so much. You've been an amazing coach and friend, and, respect right back to you. So thank you, June.
Yes, allowing it to ripple out. Thank you so much. And yeah, if you'd like to watch the replay, go to yourstorymedicine.com. And yeah, I'm super excited for all the other conversations we get to have. Please follow Leslie at She Before We, but most importantly, put yourself before others because that is in
Mhm.
service to the ones that you love.
That's right.